the Idaho High School Activities Association.
Yes.
IHSAA.
I think it's fair to say this is the equivalent of the UIL.
Of the UIL. They run. They have now voted that a new football mercy rule will be spread across all 11-man football classifications. This is according to the Idaho Statesman. Quote, the rule stipulates that once a team is ahead by 40 points in the second half, the clock will run continuously with the exception of timeouts, official timeouts, and scoring plays. The rule will need to pass, blah, 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 another one. So basically, they are saying that you'll get a running clock if you're up by 40 points in the second half.
Yeah.
Now, there's a couple of things here. One, obviously, I keep saying Idaho, Texas.
It's all right.
Idaho high school football
Yes.
is very different from Texas high school football.
Yes.
And I don't know, I'm not, this is going to stun you guys. I am not an Idaho high school football expert. I'm very sorry. So I can't tell you how often this happens. Maybe it happens every game. You know, maybe there's just 2 or 3 powerhouses in Idaho that are just these juggernauts that are making it so that every game is a blowout. But there's a couple of things here. One is that there's already some semblance of a mercy rule in Texas. Okay,
can't both the coaches agree to it?
Well, not only that, but in 6-man football, remember
we know this about 6-man.
In 6-man, they have a 45-point mercy rule, and it is a hard and fast rule, which is if a team is ever up by 45 points at or after halftime, the game is over. The game ends right there. And this happens, I wouldn't say frequently, but enough that it's a major player in every game.
Right.
That you're always thinking about it. We had a state title game end with a 45. With Richland Springs 45 Follette this past year.
Right.
Where the game ended with like 8 minutes left in the third quarter. So all of a sudden they score a touchdown and they kick an extra point, and it's a walk-off extra point. They kick it and it's over.
Right.
And everybody in this crowd knew, and they're going nuts and stuff like that. So this already exists in some semblance in Texas. So the question now becomes, would you like to see Texas implement something like this? Now, I'll tell you that there's a lot of games that are decided by more than 40 points.
Oh, yeah.
There's a
Yeah.
And there's even more games that one team is up by 40 points at any point in time.
Right.
This especially happens in district games where you will get teams that are maybe the best team in the district going up against the team that's maybe the worst team in the district, and these games, go on and on, and these games get really out of hand. We saw it with Aledo.
Right.
Aledo got with that infamous bullying complaint.
Oh, and everyone rails on Refurio every time they have a good team.
Absolutely.
I couldn't be more annoyed with it.
With 91-6 and all these, 77-0. These things do happen. Now, here is the interesting thing about it: is that this isn't what Idaho has instituted is not the 6-man rule. It's not the hard and fast 45 and it's over.
Right.
This instead more or less takes the power out of coaches' hands.
Right.
Because I'll be honest, if you go talk to coaches, this will happen not frequently, but it's on the table.
Yeah.
Okay? That it's halftime and Max High School is up on Tepper High School 55-0.
Right.
And the coaches will get together at halftime and they'll go, "Hey, you want to get the running clock going, get this thing over with. We'll get and there's this kind of wink, nod, nod. Nobody's out here trying to embarrass the other team.
Right.
Nobody's out here trying to be like, oh, we want to hang 100 on them.
Right.
There
might be a couple.
There might be a couple
trying to hang 100.
But
and I kind of like them.
Me being the coach of Tepper High School and you being the coach of Max High School, we'd get together at halftime and be like, all right, well, I'm going to pull my guys. I'm going to get my backups and but I want to get them some time.
Right.
So I actually don't like this rule.
Me either.
Because for me, I think that coaches do a good enough job regulating it themselves.
Yeah.
And I have not heard of a lot of instances in which a coach who is up by 70 points will be like, no, we're going to bang timeouts and make sure that things go, that we run up the score on them.
Right.
If running up the score were a really widespread problem because coaches were just trying to stick it to the other team, then I would maybe be interested in this. But for now, I think that coaches do a good enough job regulating it themselves that I think that in this instance, I think you want to be kind of small government about it.
Right. I think, look, if my third string comes out and they keep scoring on you, what am I supposed to do? Right. I mean, I think at that point, it's negligible. As a coach, if I have a successful program and I have a chance to get those second and third string kids lots of reps, they've worked hard for those. Shouldn't they get a chance to have those? Mm-hmm. Our friend, our senior writer, Mike Craven, texted us before this to say, personally, I'd rather lose 84-0 than be mercy ruled. There's something about the idea that you were mercy ruled, that you are not enough to go through the full.
That it's even more embarrassing.
The full regulation game. That's almost more humiliating. Mm-hmm. I sort of side with all of this. Mm-hmm. I'm always on the side of sometimes you lose 91-6 in life. You know, like that's sure. Just how it works. There's no reason. The only thing I could think of is if physically there is such a mismatch that it is dangerous.
Correct.
For the team that is losing to stay out there. In that instance, coaches get together at halftime and say, maybe we change this up a little bit. I'm okay with that, but that's really the only instance when it's very clear that someone could get hurt because there's such a difference. Then there's your difference.
For me, there's two things. One that you mentioned that I want to comment on. One, you mentioned the thing about getting these backups playing time.
Right.
And I think that's the best argument against this is that, listen, these kids, they worked hard, and they're not good enough to play on the first string. You know, there are players that are better than them, but they work hard enough that they deserve to get out on the field. Yeah. Why are we going to cut their time short? Yeah. You know, from a mandatory perspective.
Right.
The other thing is that at that point, if Max High School is just way bigger than Texas than Tepper High School, and you're just beating the crap out of me, right? From a physical perspective, not even from a scoreboard perspective,
right?
From a physical perspective, then I imagine what I'm going to do as the responsible coach of the overmatched Tepper High School. Yeah. I'm going to go up to you and be like, "Hey, man, can we get a running clock on this?" Yeah. And at that point, again, there's not a problem with coaches being like, "No, we want it. We're gonna run the 2-minute drill and start spiking it and getting extra downs." Like, that's not an issue.
Yeah.
In a vacuum, all things being equal, my tendency is always going to be towards giving coaches control.
Right. Trust the coaches. I think you and I feel the same way about this. Yeah. I mean, look, we talked to all these guys. Their number one priority is the kids.
Yes.
If you look out on that field and your guys are in trouble, right, genuine trouble, you know, the other coach is going to understand that too, and you can have a way to work this out to go, hey, look.
Now this
let's figure this out.
This might be if this was college where it's a little more cutthroat and it's a little more I got to impress the donor base, so I'm going to run up the score on Joe Schmo State.
You and me, you know my stances. I got no empathy for anything in college. You bury everyone.
Yeah, I mean at that point you bury them, and if there's people who want to start instituting mandatory running clocks in that instance, I can see that because it's a little more cutthroat. But I think in the end, I trust Texas high school football coaches to handle their own business, that I don't think the UIL needs to step in and say, oh, well, we got to make sure that these games don't get out of hand, because coaches do a good enough job regulating it themselves. Yeah. So it's interesting. I would also imagine that the reason Idaho's doing that is I wonder if blowouts are just a lot more common. And I wonder if I think there's a decent reason why it's happening in six-man football.
Sure.
In six-man football, I can totally understand it because, one, the margin for – first of all, those games, if there are games, this is 100% true. Mm-hmm. There are six-man games that if that mercy rule didn't exist, they would be 200-0. Yeah. That's not hyperbole. Yeah. There are teams that could name their score against other teams.
Yeah.
So that's part of it. The other part of it is that when you only have 9 kids on the team, if you're playing this meaningless game, where it's already 77-0 in the third quarter, and then a player tears his knee up, I mean,
your season's in jeopardy.
That's sad. That's sad from an 11-man perspective. Yeah. It could potentially cost you your entire season on the 6-man perspective.
Yeah.
So I understand that point, but from an 11-man perspective, I think that coaches do a good enough job regulating the game themselves that I don't think this kind of rule is necessary. So